Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the Kauffman Foundation's Research Grant Pathway. We're thrilled to have you here as we walk through the key components of this grant opportunity designed specifically to fund research that impacts or informs efforts to advance equitable economic mobility. This research will be a key contributor in advancing the field of closing economic mobility gaps, removing systemic barriers, and creating pathways to opportunity and prosperity. I'm Yvonne Owens Ferguson. I'm the Chief Research Learning and Evaluation Officer here at the Foundation. I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Joshua Akers, Director of Research, and Dr. Chhaya Kolavalli, our Senior Research Science Officer, who's been taking the lead on the design of the research grants. Later, we will also be joined by the principal investigators of grants recently funded in the first cycle of this grant pathway. So here's a quick overview of today's agenda. We will begin with an overview of the Foundation's mission and vision. I'll also take us through a quick grounding in the various research and also grant types and pathways we have available. Next, I'll ground us in the why for this research grant, and we'll lay out the body of research that will inform us and has informed us, and hopefully we will contribute to. Chhaya will walk us through the details of the grant and also provide an overview of the objectives of the grant opportunity and an overview of the application process. And broadly, what we will be looking for in a quality application. We'll then open up for our panel conversation with a few of our research Cycle 1 grantees, and they'll share insight about how to craft a successful and impactful research grant proposal facilitated by Josh. And lastly, we will close today's webinar with time for your questions. So you can actually start now using the Q&A box now to post your questions. So over the past couple of years, we've conducted a series of community conversations to gather feedback and learn from the people who know Kansas City best. We've been gathering insights, reflecting on our previous work, and considering how we can be more effective in driving economic mobility. And we wanted to ensure that our approach not only honors the legacy of our founder, Ewing Marion Kauffman, but also reflects the needs and aspirations of our community today. And as a result, we launched our Foundation's strategic refresh and our 2035 vision. By 2035, we want to see Kansas City as a national model for equitable economic mobility, dismantling systemic barriers, and setting generations of historically under-resourced communities on the path to prosperity. We know research at every scale, from the nation to the neighborhood, is essential if we are to achieve our vision and make it become a reality. Next slide. And to reach that 2035 vision, we focus on these three evidence-informed strategic priorities, which include college access and completion, to ensure more students not only enroll in college, but also complete their degrees. Workforce and career development, to connect people with the skills and opportunities needed to succeed in today's job market. And entrepreneurship, to support new and existing businesses that can drive economic growth and job creation. And by focusing on these three strategic priority areas and collaborating with the key organizations that drive impact in these areas, we can meaningfully narrow and move to close the economic mobility gaps that persist in our communities. So the why behind our priorities is simple yet powerful. We are committed to closing gaps for the most under-resourced communities. So there are various grant types to meet a range of opportunities and to achieve our 2035 vision from a number of vantage points. We have our capacity building grants that are designed to help organizations strengthen their internal operations in the organization in ways that deem fit to strengthen or even scale their impact. We have the collective impact grants, and those are for coalitions of high capacity organizations that are working together to drive systems level change. We also have our project grants, and they provide funding for specific projects that align with our strategic priorities, whether it's a new initiative or scaling of an existing one. And last but not least, our recently launched Uncommon Leadership Award, and I'll take a minute to spotlight this monumental award. The Uncommon Leader Impact Award recognizes non-C-suite employees at 501c3 public charities who drive meaningful, impactful change through the work that is aligned with the mission of the Kauffman Foundation to advance economic mobility. And this award honors individuals who both exemplify the core values of our founder and demonstrate significant contributions to the Kansas City region. It's really important to note that this award is only open to individuals working and creating an impact in the Kansas City area. So if you are in or reside in Kansas City, you've probably seen our billboards. We even have Facebook ads about it. And the other day, I actually heard an ad on my local radio station about it. So the word is getting out in Kansas City about this award. And so please continue to spread the word if you have not already done it. Next slide. We're going to make it easy for you to spread the word and nominate someone for the Uncommon Leadership Award by asking you to scan this QR code now and find the nomination form. It is important to note that the nominations do close August 1st. So we are totally excited about this award, as you can tell. And we are equally excited about our research grants and how they will deepen our understanding of the issues we're addressing and how the findings will translate into practical solutions. We don't fund research for research's sake, but we fund research so that the insights and outcomes advance action. So now Josh is going to share some of the goals and framing of this Cycle 2 grant opportunity.
Thank you, Yvonne. We're excited to discuss our research grant pathway with you today. We've spent the last several months building this grant pathway with the intention of eliciting rigorous research while informing and strengthening our approach as a foundation. Specifically, we're soliciting research projects advancing our understanding of how to expand equitable economic mobility and increase opportunity. These grants will strengthen the foundation's ability to catalyze our investments across 3 strategic priority areas and accelerate equitable economic opportunity in the Kansas City region and beyond. Opportunity for economic mobility in the United States continues to decline. Life outcomes differ significantly by race, gender, and geography. Persistent segregation and limited access to opportunity foreclose opportunity in urban and rural areas across the country. As an example, children born in 1940, 90% earn more than their parents. For those born in 1980, only 50% earn more than their parents. And in Kansas City, the median household income by age 30 for those born in 1992 was $500 less than it was for those born in 1978. In 99% of U.S. Census tracts, the Black-white wealth gap persists from childhood to adulthood. The Foundation's key strategic priorities, college access and completion, workforce development, and entrepreneurship, are demonstrated levers for individuals to achieve social and economic mobility. However, these levers are limited by persistent inequality. Equitable economic mobility necessitates systems-level research approaches, incorporating place, centering community, and engaging with systemic and structural impediments to more equitable mobility. We do offer a few examples of how proposals could explore equitable economic mobility in the research call, and you can find those examples on our website, along with the rest of the grant opportunity information. Both the purpose for this grant opportunity and the criteria against which we will assess research proposals are grounded in the values that guide our research, learning, and evaluation team. We're guided by the desire to communicate complex scientific ideas in simple and accessible ways, by data justice and efforts to build shared ownership and trust with the people we serve, and by iterative learning focused on impact, and importantly, by scientific rigor. Fundamentally, we're grounded in cultural humility and the desire to invest in research that centers people and communities. You'll see these values embedded throughout this grant opportunity. I'm going to pass it to Chhaya, who will share greater detail of the research grant.
Thanks, Josh. So the application process starts on our website. There you'll find information for every grant category and an eligibility quiz made up of a few yes and no questions. That's designed to make sure you understand the minimum requirements to apply for that grant. Please note that the criteria is not that you have to be Kansas City based, but that your research project has the potential to impact or inform efforts to close economic mobility gaps in the Kansas City region and beyond. The application questions are available on our website as a PDF to download. That'll show you both the questions that make up our letter of interest and our full application. For this cycle, we're soliciting applications for research projects of a 1-year duration or longer with $150,000 per year minimum funding requests. This cycle will include a 2-stage process. At the first stage, we're soliciting 2-page LOI. That application portal is already live and can be found on our website. The LOI portal closes on August 10th, 2025. We anticipate communicating decisions about declines and advances in September of this year, and successful applicants in this cycle can expect to receive funding in March of 2026. I want to share a little bit about the criteria we'll be using to assess these research proposals. We want to be transparent as possible about what a successful proposal would look like. To that end, you will find all of this information on our website. We've also designed each LOI and full application question to very explicitly match with our rubric assessments, so there's no trick questions here. Research applications will be reviewed both by Kauffman staff and by external peer reviewers. External reviewers will be selected based on methodological and topical expertise, and they'll help us ensure that we're only moving forward high-quality work. So we will, of course, assess proposals against some basic criteria. We'll be looking for adherence to application guidelines and instructions, and clarity in writing and thought throughout the proposal. We'll also be looking at whether the project lead or team holds strong, direct, or transferable experience, both in the research area and in executing on a grant of this size. We'll also assess whether the proposed timelines, budget, and staffing plans are appropriate for the proposed work. We also assess against some more in-depth criteria. We'll be looking for work that clearly speaks to our goal of closing economic mobility gaps. We want to see rigorous and in-depth dissemination and evaluation plans, which are appropriate for the work being proposed. And where applicable, we want to know how the research could inform efforts to close gaps in Kansas City. Whether the work is conducted in Kansas City or not, thoughtful and actionable analysis of how the research may be applicable to the Kansas City context is really important to us. Lastly, there are 2 criteria that assess equitable research processes. All applicants invited to submit full applications will be expected to share their thinking on how equitable approaches and processes are embedded in their proposed work. And we expect that to look very different depending on the method and approach that you're using. We understand that could vary. For some, it could involve intentional and innovative disaggregation plans. For others, this could involve creating feedback loops with folks with lived experience to validate research findings. We do not want to be prescriptive here either. Equitable processes will look different for different research projects, and we want to give you the space to design what's right for you and your work. Lastly, we have one criteria that only applies if you're submitting a research project that involves community engaged or participatory approaches. If you are working with community in your project, you'll be asked at the full proposal stage to provide information about your experience working with community in the past, and you'll also need to upload letters of support from any named partners. Our reviewers will assess this against the criteria that proposals should involve mutually beneficial and inclusive engagement plans. I want to take a second to address geography. For this research grant opportunity, we, again, are not expecting applicants to be located within the Kansas City region. We are also not expecting that the research be conducted in Kansas City. What we care about is that the research has the ability to impact or inform efforts to close economic mobility gaps in Kansas City. We invite research from partners nationwide to help us develop this knowledge. And finally, some detail about how, if you're funded, you can expect to work with us over the duration of your grant. We work in close conversation with our grantees. We really want to learn alongside you. You also heard us share a desire to create impact in Kansas City through your work. One of the ways we do that is by having 2 officers work with each research grantee, a research science officer and an impact officer. Our impact officers work primarily with project-based grantees locally. Through close relationship with our research grantees, our impact officers will work to surface themes in our work and opportunities for translation. We'll also be looking for ways to amplify the impact of your work beyond the Kansas City context. Whether you see the primary areas of impact for your work in academic spaces, policy arenas, or community-based interventions, we'll support your efforts to disseminate insight and impact. And with that, I'm excited to hand it back to Josh to lead us in conversation with some successful applicants from cycle 1 of our research RFP.
Great. We're really excited to be in conversation today with 3 grantees who just received funding from cycle 1 of our research RFP. Our hope with this panel is to generate some insight for our audience about effective strategies and approaches for writing a successful research grant application. We're joined by Dr. Sally Sadoff, Arthur Brody Chair in Management, Leadership, and Professor of Economics and Strategy at UC San Diego's Rady School of Management. Dr. Heather Cameron, Michael B. Kauffman Professor of Practice and Social Entrepreneurship at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. And Dr. Carrie Fang, Associate Professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Thank you all for joining us today. I'd love to start with a very quick grounding in the work you'll be doing. Could you briefly summarize what your research will explore? Sally, we could start with you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Our research is going to focus on discrimination in lending to small businesses, and we'll be looking nationally at lending institutions across the country and compare those of the national patterns to the patterns in Kansas City that we find.
Heather, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. Great to be here. We're going to be exploring how different community wealth strategies, for example, shared equity housing or shared commercial real estate or light manufacturing, could add to economic mobility in Kansas City by looking at examples from other cities across the United States.
All right. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So the round 1 grant is focused on racial wealth gap, and our study looking into the Blacks-owned businesses' access to urban agglomerations, concentrations of related industries, and they are a major mechanism of how businesses were able to reap the benefits from urban agglomerations and generate revenue. So we're looking into whether Black-owned businesses have the same access to urban agglomeration to be able to locate in urban agglomeration and getting the same benefits from urban agglomerations.
Great. Thank you all. At our full application stage, we ask applicants to discuss how equitable approaches and processes inform their work. Can you share how you think about equity in research and how you wove those principles and processes into your proposals?
So since our focus is on discrimination, equity is at the forefront. We're trying to understand the extent to which inequities in small business loan receipt by minority and female-owned businesses may be due in part to discrimination at the lending stage. And so we're trying to pull that apart. So the research question itself is motivated by questions around equity, and our team is comprised of people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, different perspectives. And throughout the work, we're going to be communicating with both lending institutions and minority-owned small businesses on the ground to understand how their experience aligns or doesn't align with what we're seeing in the data.
Like Sally, we've put together a very interdisciplinary team with many different backgrounds and lived experiences in order to look at the question about how one can build a more democratic economy that leads to greater outcomes in terms of economic mobility. And then in addition, we've put quite a lot of thought into the roles of power between universities and community groups and how we structure the way the work is done and directed so that we can make sure that as many people can have a meaningful influence on the work that we're doing day to day to do the research.
Also similar to the other two projects, our project has been informed by equitable approaches in 3 ways. One is the entire research design is informed by equitable approach. We're looking into whether Black-owned businesses have equal access to urban agglomerations and urban agglomeration benefits. And second, we are building a research team that is multiracial, and we have people from different racial and ethnic background in the team to voice out their own experiences and their different perspectives. And thirdly, our research is informed by a participatory approach. We will be directly connect with Black business owners, Black business organizations, Black Chamber of Commerce to directly talk to them, have multiple meetings with them to make sure their voices are heard in the process. They inform our research. They look at our research findings and if that resonate with their experiences or not, and their interpretations of our research findings. We will also engage with them to design actionable practice. How can we move this forward? How can we improve the practice on the ground to get them more access to urban agglomeration benefits?
Right. So each of you thoughtfully responded to the ask in the funding call to incorporate Kansas City. Can you share a bit about how you thought about and approached weaving insights for Kansas City into your proposal?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we'll be looking at lending institutions nationally, but I think that's actually really powerful because then it allows us to compare the national patterns to the patterns we see in Kansas City. And then we're going to focus particularly in Kansas City in our communication. So meeting with key stakeholders there, including lending institutions and business owners, but also the regional SBA that has a lot of influence on policy around small business lending.
Well, I'm based in St. Louis, right next door to Kansas City, and had the honor of doing a few other Kauffman projects. So when I heard this call, I basically got in a rental car and drove out there and then met with a bunch of the actors on site, and really thought about how some of the things that are happening nationally around community wealth building and inclusive prosperity are already kind of bubbling up in Kansas City and how we could build on that. So it's been a great opportunity to see who are the activists, the philanthropists, all of the different people in community who are trying to build things, and had a great opportunity to have a lot of conversations with people at the very beginning phases. And so I'm really excited about actually working to put together things which are already happening, but like how do we bring in some sort of national insight? And so that was like a big point of the project, was like, how do we actually get embedded into some of the ecosystems in Kansas City, bring them in contact with people around the nation, and hopefully do what Dr. Yvonne was speaking of, is like, how is Kansas City turning into an example for some of these exciting new research initiatives and policy initiatives?
My project is also at the national level. We're looking at all metropolitan areas in the United States, in which the Kansas City Metro will be a very good example with a significant Black population. And in the policy perspective of this research, we will be specifically zoom even more into Kansas City Metro as an example of metropolitan area example level policy implementations. We'll be working directly with the Mid-Atlanta Regional Council, which oversees economic development strategies and particularly industrial cluster strategies. We will be evaluating whether their current strategies are inclusive of Black-owned business or not. How can we move forward to improve that? We will be having, as I said, direct engagement with Black business owners and Black business organizations and Black chambers of commerce. And for that, we will also be very focused on Kansas City Metro, leveraging the network that Kauffman Foundation has. And I'm in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, not too far away, which I will have the benefit of being able to drive over and directly engage with these stakeholders as well.
That's great. I want to turn quickly to dissemination plans, because combined, you all set a great example of the myriad of ways you can affect change through research. I hope you could share a bit about how you've proposed disseminating results, creating impact, and creating impact through your funded research.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we talked about meeting with business owners and lenders, and we are basing this on one of the co-authors has a program for underrepresented businesses in Houston, which we want to model for Kansas City, where we meet with minority-owned businesses and share out our findings, but also try to use that to improve their experience, their outcomes in the lending process. So creating lessons and slide decks and those kinds of things that they can take with them, as well as hearing back from them about their experience. Similarly, reflecting using sessions with lenders, and we've done this in Houston as well and want to port it over to Kansas City. And then also trying to create really accessible public information. So in addition to research papers and the kinds of things we do as academics, doing things like creating interactive maps that the public can interact with and play with and look at how their region is doing compared to others. And of course, zooming in on Kansas City as an example. So that would be some trying to have both white papers, academic papers, and then really mass publicly available materials.
Yes, like Sally, we're going to be having a strategy which is around academic papers and public events. And then in addition, our team includes the Aspen Institute and the Democracy Collaborative and my colleague Peter Boomgarden that runs a podcast for business owners. So we're going to try it in terms of sharing for the different audiences and all of these different ways, as well as hosting different events with our partners in Kansas City for members of the ecosystem to be able to elevate some of the messages and to make sure that everybody who wants to be part of it learns early in the process how they can play a meaningful role.
We have a threefold approach. One is our project has a clear theoretical contribution, and we will be publishing it in peer-reviewed academic journals. Second is we are very interested in making a policy impact because our research will be very relevant to the economic development strategies, especially industrial cluster strategies that are currently out there. So we will be directly working with the Federal Economic Development Administration as do a review of current economic development strategies and how their industrial cluster policies are being inclusive or not being inclusive. We will be also, as I already mentioned, specifically work with the Mid-America Regional Council overseeing Kansas City Metro to provide also a metro level example of how to do these policy makeovers. And the third approach we will be doing, as I already mentioned, will be engaging with stakeholders, Black business owners in Kansas City Metro. And we want to engage with them in terms of co-strategizing what are some of the grassroots action that we can put together. And we want to, because policy change may take a little bit, what are other things, what are other actionable strategies we can immediately implement on the ground to help Black-owned businesses have more access to urban agglomeration benefits.
So I want to thank you all again for your time, but I want to ask you one last question before you go. Is there any other advice for prospective applicants that you'd like to share?
I just wanted to say that the Kauffman application is so well structured. It's so clear what the questions are. And if you follow the structure of the RFP, and I really appreciate the word limits so that, you don't feel like you have to fill in, more than is really necessary. I think just really closely following the guidelines of the grant will take you to where you need to be. So structuring your application, following the lines of the RFP, I think is really helpful.
Yes, compared to many other types of grants, it's pretty painless to apply with Kauffman. And I think the questions are thoughtfully presented in a way that helps the research teams align their work tighter than perhaps when you just have a proposal and you don't really care where it's going. I think there's a lot of thoughtfulness that can go into this process. And I think for those of us as researchers who are very interested in the policy changes, there's like a huge opportunity to work with a well-resourced foundation that is so committed to a specific geography, which is part of the reason why our team was so excited, is that we realized that we could, apply some great analysis and do all the regular things we do as researchers, but have the opportunity to actually see a greater implementation pathway. And so I hope those of you who are taking part in the webinar really understand the potential of that we can actually be doing research which has huge on-the-ground effects.
I would say don't hesitate to reach out to Kauffman Foundation and to all these amazing people that has been here with you on this webinar today. I have worked with Kauffman Foundation in different capacities in the past and as of now, and these people has been tremendously helpful to me in helping me understand the process, solving any potential technical issues, or reshaping the way I design my research, and they are very, very valuable. They can be considered part of your team, and they are very helpful.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sadoff, Dr. Cameron, Dr. Fang, for your time. We very much appreciate it. And with that, I'll pass it to Yvonne, who will open us up for any questions our audience may have.
For sharing your experiences with our cycle 1. Now it's time for our questions. As you can see, again, fill up that Q&A box and post your questions there. For those that were not able to get to today, there will be a FAQ on our website that you can reach out to. So if we're not able to get to your question specifically during this webinar, please refer back to our website so you can get additional information. So I am going to ask for your patience. I'm going to rely on our outstanding tech team and StratComs team to help us triage with some of the questions. But I will start. Josh and Chhaya will help us answer these questions. Okay. Question. Will proposals for research conducted within Kansas City be prioritized in your review? I'm going to reach out to Chhaya to answer that question because that was mentioned in some of her remarks. Chhaya, will you answer that question?
Yeah, the answer is no. Full stop.
That was easy, huh?
Yeah, you heard our panelists. They all had really thoughtful ways of incorporating thinking about Kansas City, and it often did not include actually being in Kansas City. So no priority given to research studies conducted in Kansas City.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Another question that was asked in the chat is around budget and budget limitations. Is there a cap on the budget that I can propose? And there is a minimum. I'll again turn it to Chhaya to answer that question. The question also asks, is there a minimum and is there a maximum for the research proposals? Chhaya?
We do not have a maximum yearly budget. The minimum is $150,000 per year. What we're looking for are projects that prioritize impact and dissemination of work and budgets that are right-sized to that approach. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just to make sure that your budget aligns with the project. Not to worry about whether there's a cap, but whether or not you have the resources you need to do it, and they're spread appropriately throughout, and that's clear to the reviewers.
Awesome. Okay. Open for both of you all to respond to. The panel of principal investigators were all professors. Is being in academia a requirement for a research grant? Are most of the research grants you fund in university environments? In other words, is this grant opportunity open to community nonprofits, or is it primarily focused on research institutions? Josh, I'll have you start, and Chhaya, you can chime in.
Sure, I would encourage you. I know that they posted in the chat the press release that went out about the grantees from the first cycle. And if you go through that, you'll see that the majority are universities, but it's not all of them. And so if you have a research project that has rigor and engaged, whether you're in a university or not, we would encourage you to apply. For some of you that might be thinking, how do you actually fully construct a research project in that context? Looking for a partner is also a good way to build an application as well. Chhaya, do you have anything else?
No, that was great.
So another question asked along those same lines in terms of the typical duration in years of funded projects. I would encourage, again, our StratComs team posted the press release of our Cycle 1 grantees. And there are 1-year grant proposals that were funded, and also up to 3 years that were also funded. But again, it's up to how you form your proposal, what makes sense in terms of what you're trying to research and those outcomes. So there is a minimum of 1 year. In terms of a maximum, whatever makes sense for the research that you're proposing. Okay. There's another question around, peer reviewers. Okay. How do you select your peer reviewers? Do you have a pool of reviewers you often use, or are applicants asked to suggest peer reviewers, or perhaps something else entirely? I'll pass that to Chhaya.
It's a good question. We do not ask applicants to suggest peer reviewers. We identify peer reviewers based on the methodologies, approaches, and scopes of work that we see in the full applications that we want to move forward. And then we reach out to folks who are best suited to help us assess that work at that time. Josh, do you have anything to add?
Oh, did he say no? He has nothing. Okay. I'm trying to pay attention to the chat and all the things. So thank you for that. Okay. Another question is around, could research funding be used in a planning capacity if we have clear research questions, but have not yet determined the ideal methodology? I'll turn that over to Josh.
Well, as any good research project, it depends. But given the floor on these grants and kind of where we're looking to go, it would seem to me that a planning process might be a little early stage for the size of these grants and the years there. But again, it depends, right? If it's a strong proposal that's leading to more interesting research, it may make it through.
Okay, thank you for that, Josh. Okay, there was a question in the chat about what is able to be funded with a grant, with our grant funding, and I wanted to be clear about what the Kauffman Foundation is unable to provide funding for, which includes brick and mortar. We can't fund buildings or housing. We don't fund endowments, institutions that discriminate, loans, expenses, seed capital for private business. We do not fund that. We're unable to fund lobbying or political activities, political, social, fraternal organizations, religious activities, and requests to fund individuals, including direct scholarships. I think the chat, and just because the Q&A is really fast and furious, is around buildings and housing. We are unable to support funding for those things. Okay, I'm going to move on. Will you accept multiple LOI from a single organization or institution? I will pass that to Chhaya.
Yeah, so you might notice that we can't give grants to individual researchers. Those grants are routed through the nonprofit institutions they're housed in. So yes, we receive multiple applications from researchers based at the same institution. That is fine. We do not have a limit on how many researchers per institution can apply. If a small nonprofit organization not a research institution wanted to apply, it might be more appropriate they submit one application, thinking of capacity and ability to carry out the proposed work.
Thank you for that. There's also a question getting back to the peer review process. Is feedback provided throughout the application process, even for rejected applications? And I'll turn back to Chhaya for that one.
Yes, providing feedback is really important to us. Being mindful of our capacity, we do receive a lot of applications. We provide feedback to denied applicants at our full application stage. So if you submit an LOI and you don't move forward to the full application stage, you won't receive feedback from us. But if you move forward to the full application stage, we do provide feedback, sharing what our external reviewers had to say about your work.
Awesome, thank you. There's another question, and Josh, I'll turn to you to start and try to chime in. Could you please expand on how applicable national research and policy work is to your focus on Kansas City? How extensive does the comparison need to be between national and Kansas City level research?
Depends on the project, right? But I mean, I think what you saw even from the panelists, right, is some of them are doing national level projects, but thinking about where those applications could be in Kansas City or a city like Kansas City. The way I often like to think about it is in a proposal, we'd like to see that you thought about Kansas City, right? How might it be that what it is you're looking at could apply to this place, right? We exist within national context, we exist within state context. There's all kinds of ways to look at it and think about it. Yet at the same time, the work doesn't have to be Kansas City specific. So that's a long way of saying it depends, but I would encourage you to apply.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, I see there's another question about I see many opportunities to align with Kauffman grant opportunities. We did go through the grant pathways. Are there limitations to how many grant types we can apply for in a year? So I would encourage you to read the descriptions of our grant types. Typically, we fund one grant type per organization. So it's really important to read the descriptions of the different grant types and what aligns in terms of the range of opportunities that are available around the grant types. So again, make sure you go to our website and read closely, not only this research call, but also the other grant types to see which is most applicable for the opportunities you're seeking. Okay, there's also a question around, okay, this is, while the Kauffman Foundation is focused, back another question around Kansas City. While the Kauffman Foundation is focused on the Kansas City region, many of the factors that shape economic opportunities at the local and metropolitan level are influenced by state and federal policies. Is there a preference for research focused on policy factors at the local or metropolitan level? Josh, I'll go to you, and Chhaya, you can chime in.
That's a no, right? So we are interested in all scales.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I think it's slowing down a little bit. Here's another question around the types of research that we're interested in. Are there examples of Kauffman-funded research projects that are rooted in psychological or educational research methods? This asker is curious about our interest and willingness to fund smaller scale studies, like qualitative or smaller survey-based studies. How would that be received by reviewers in the Kauffman portfolio? I'll pass that to Chhaya and start by saying that we are agnostic in terms of the methods that we look at, and we embrace mixed methods approaches and qualitative as well. So please don't be shy around the methods that you propose in terms of your in terms of your research ideas, and I'll pass it to Chhaya to answer more so about that.
Yeah, there is not one specific type of project we are looking for. We are looking for innovative, equitable approaches to understanding equitable economic mobility. And many questions within that space are best answered by smaller survey-based studies or qualitative work. So we're looking for approaches that are right-sized to the kind of question you're asking, that are best suited to help develop new information. So we're absolutely open to qualitative, smaller studies, and would find external reviewers who are skilled in that space as well to provide feedback.
Awesome. Thank you for that. A question, is there an indirect cost cap? Chhaya. Do you know that, yeah, I'll pass it to you.
Yes, there is, and we will drop the link in our chat to show you the overhead policy on our website. It varies by the type of organization that's applying. So we'll share that with you in a moment.
Thanks. Is there a typical percent of LOIs that typically move forward to the full grant proposal stage? Either one, Josh or Chhaya, just chime in.
This is the second time through, but we can tell you that in the first round, 20% moved forward, and about 10% of all applications were funded in that first round.
And just to add on to that, this round, we are trying to make it simple. So it's a 2-page, and I think Sally talked about the structure of the opportunity. It's a 2-page LOI for submission. So that is something that is due August 10th. And from there, that's where we see and go through review processes in terms of the invitation to the full application. So the LOI is short and brief on purpose, but I still encourage with that to understand about what you're proposing and make sure that you get to the rigor of the science that you're proposing, because that's something we are looking for in terms of a guiding principle of how we're looking at the applications we receive. Okay, I don't see, and I'm going to ask my Stratcoms and tech partners to help me if there's other questions that we didn't necessarily get to. I think we covered many of the ones that are here that are in the chat. Some of them we combined so we could answer. And again, we want to make sure that we encourage folks to visit our website and the FAQ section with getting any answers to other questions that we weren't able to touch on, and those that we were able to touch on today as well. And with that, again, we are excited that you are interested in applying for our research grant opportunity for Cycle 2. Please check out our website listed here on the slide. And again, we look forward to receiving your letter of interest by the August 10th deadline. So thank you again.